The silence in the great hall pressed down like a weight. Krell's claws scraped against the metal floor as he walked toward the witness stand. His scales, once bright green and gold, had turned dull gray over the years. Deep scars ran across his face and arms, telling stories he wished he could forget. 12 different alien species sat in the curved seats above him. Their eyes followed his every move. Some looked curious. Others looked doubtful. None of them understood what they were about to hear. The council speaker, a tall blue creature with 6 arms, activated the recording device. The soft hum filled the air. "State your name and rank for the record." Krell's voice came out rough and tired. "Krell of the Iron Claw Battalion, former strike commander of the Draconian 3rd Fleet." He paused, looking up at the faces staring down at him. "One of 10 survivors from my entire species' military force." A few council members shifted in their seats. The numbers were known, but hearing them spoken aloud made them real in a different way. "You are here to give testimony about the human hegemony war," the speaker continued, "specifically about human military tactics and behavior during combat operations." Krell nodded slowly. "I am here to warn you about what humans really are. Please elaborate." The old warrior took a deep breath. His memories wanted to stay buried, but the galaxy needed to know. "Before the war, we thought we understood predators. My people, the Draconians, have been apex hunters for millions of years. We have fought the Mantis Swarms, the Crystal Legions, the Shadow Collective. We won every war through strength, honor, and superior tactics." He looked directly at the human ambassador sitting in the back corner. She was small, pale, wearing simple clothes. She looked harmless. That was the first mistake everyone made. When humans first appeared in our space 15 years ago, we laughed. They were tiny. Their ships were slow. Their weapons seemed primitive. They had no claws, no natural armor, no poison sacs or energy organs. They looked like prey animals. The mantis representative clicked its mandibles. Yet somehow these prey animals defeated 47 allied species. How is this possible? Krell's eyes grew distant. Because we never understood what kind of predator they really were. We thought predators were about strength and speed. Humans taught us that the deadliest predator is the one that thinks. The council speaker leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "When the war started, 47 species joined the Hegemony Alliance. We had numerical superiority of 300 to 1. We had better technology. We had thousands of years of military experience. We had every advantage except one, which was, humans had studied us. For decades before they ever fired a shot, they had been watching us, learning how we fought, understanding how we thought. They knew our weaknesses before we knew they existed." The room grew quiet. Several council members exchanged glances. Krell continued, his voice growing stronger. "The first battles went exactly as we expected. We would announce our presence, issue formal challenges, and engage in honorable combat. We won every single encounter. Human ships retreated or were destroyed. We celebrated our easy victories. Then what changed? Everything." Krell's claws dug into the metal railing in front of him. "Humans don't fight like any other species in the galaxy. They don't follow the rules of warfare that every civilized race has used for thousands of years. They don't care about honor or tradition or proper military conduct." The human ambassador in the back wrote something in a small notebook. She never stopped smiling. After 3 months of easy victories, something shifted. Human attacks became different. They stopped announcing themselves. They stopped fighting during proper battle hours. They started attacking supply lines, communication relays, civilian infrastructure. They began fighting in ways that no honorable species would consider. "Are you suggesting humans committed war crimes?" asked the speaker. Krell shook his head. "No, that's the terrifying part. Technically, they never broke any galactic laws. They just fought in ways we never imagined possible. They turned our own rules against us." "Explain." "Galactic law says you must give enemy wounded medical aid if requested. Humans would request aid, then detonate explosives when our medics approached. Galactic law says you cannot attack during religious ceremonies. Humans learned our religious schedules and attacked during every single one. Galactic law says you must accept formal surrenders. Humans would surrender, get taken to our ships, then sabotage our systems from within." The room erupted in shocked voices. Several representatives stood up, shouting questions and objections. The speaker called for order. "Are you saying humans are dishonorable?" "I'm saying humans don't understand honor the way we do." Krell's voice carried over the noise. "To humans, there is only one rule in war: win. Everything else is just details." "Surely you exaggerate." Krell pulled up his sleeve, revealing a long scar that ran from his wrist to his elbow. I got this scar during the Battle of Iron Ridge. A human soldier was dying, gutshot and bleeding out. I approached to give him final honors, as is proper for a fallen warrior. He looked me in the eyes, said thank you in perfect Draconian, then activated a plasma grenade. He tried to kill you with his last breath? He succeeded in killing 3 of my soldiers. I was lucky to only lose some scales. Krell looked around the room. That was when I first understood what we were fighting. Humans don't just use weapons. They become weapons. Even their deaths are tactical decisions. The human ambassador looked up from her notebook and nodded approvingly at Krell. He felt a chill run down his spine. The worst part was realizing how long they had been preparing. Every human prisoner we captured knew basic phrases in our languages. They understood our military ranks, our cultural taboos, our psychological weak points. They had been studying us for years, learning everything about how we think and fight. What did you do with this information? We tried to adapt. We changed our tactics, updated our protocols, modified our strategies, but humans adapted faster. Every time we learned to counter one of their tricks, they had already moved on to something new. They treated war like a learning exercise. The speaker looked troubled. How does this end? Krell was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. It doesn't end. That's what makes humans so terrifying. Every other species in the galaxy fights to achieve objectives. Humans fight to learn how to fight better next time. He gestured toward the human ambassador. She's been sitting there for 2 hours, taking notes about everything I've said, learning about draconian psychology, understanding how we process trauma, studying our defensive reactions. Even now, 15 years after the war ended, they're still gathering intelligence. The human woman looked up and waved cheerfully at the council. Her smile never wavered. You think you're safe because the war is over, Krell said. You have no idea what you've invited into your council chambers. 3 years before sitting in the council chambers, Krell had been a different creature entirely. His scales gleamed with pride and battle honors. His unit, the Ironclaw Battalion, had never lost a single engagement in 20 years of service. Pharaoh Prime was supposed to be another easy victory. The mining world held strategic metals that both sides needed for ship construction. Intelligence reports showed only a small human garrison protecting the facilities. Krell's battalion of 300 elite draconian warriors would sweep in, eliminate resistance, and secure the planet within a day. The transport ships landed during the afternoon hours following proper military protocol. Krell's forces established a defensive perimeter and sent formal challenges to the human garrison. According to galactic law, the humans had 12 hours to respond before combat could begin. No response came. As night fell, Krell gathered his officers for final battle preparations. The Draconians had set up camp in the traditional manner, with ceremonial fires burning and honor guards posted at regular intervals. Military tradition demanded that warriors speak prayers to their ancestors before battle. The ritual had been followed for thousands of years. Sir, shouldn't we post additional sentries? Asked Lieutenant Voss, a young officer on his first campaign. The humans haven't responded to our challenges. Krell dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. Humans fight like cowards. They'll either surrender at dawn or run away. Either way, we'll be home by tomorrow evening. The prayer ceremony began at midnight. 300 draconian voices rose together, chanting the ancient words that connected them to their warrior ancestors. The sound echoed across the mining complex, carrying their courage and determination into the night sky. Krell was in the middle of reciting the Oath of Iron Claws when the first explosion ripped through their camp. The blast came from behind their defensive line, where no enemy should have been able to approach. Orange flame lit up the darkness as their ammunition storage erupted. Krell spun around, trying to understand what was happening. Contact left, someone shouted. Contact right.
Contact from above.
Weapons fire erupted from a dozen different directions. But there were no muzzle flashes, no visible targets. The humans were firing from concealed positions, using the mining equipment and rocky terrain as cover. Krell's tactical training kicked in. First company, advance on the eastern ridge. Second company, secure the landing zone. Third company, establish overwatch positions. His orders were met with chaos. Every time his soldiers moved toward one source of enemy fire, they were hit from a different direction. The humans weren't fighting from fixed positions like civilized warriors. They were moving constantly, hitting and disappearing like ghosts. "Sir." Lieutenant Voss crawled up beside him, his armor smoking from a near miss. "We can't get a target lock on any of them. They're not fighting like soldiers." "What do you mean?" "They're fighting like animals. Like pack hunters." Krell raised his head above the rocky outcrop they were using for cover. Through his night vision scope, he could see human figures moving through the darkness. But they weren't moving like individuals. They moved as a group, each one covering the others, communicating without words, flowing around obstacles like water. "Focus fire on grid 7-7, Krell commanded. His warriors opened up with plasma rifles, lighting up the designated area with devastating energy blasts. When the barrage ended, nothing remained but melted rock and metal. But the human fire continued from grid 8-2 completely unaffected. They had moved again. Somehow, in the middle of a firefight, they had relocated their entire position without being detected. The battle continued for hours. Every time the Draconians thought they had located the human forces, the enemy would vanish and reappear somewhere else. It was like fighting shadows. By dawn, Krell's battalion had expended most of their ammunition and had nothing to show for it except damaged equipment and wounded soldiers. Then the psychological warfare began, speakers hidden throughout. The mining complex activated simultaneously. Draconian voices filled the air, but they weren't speaking words of courage or challenge. They were playing recordings of dying Draconian soldiers from previous battles. "Help me," gasped a familiar voice. It was Sergeant Roth from Delta Company, who had died 2 months earlier on Kepler Station. "Please, someone help me." "I don't want to die alone." "Mother," sobbed another voice. "I want to go home to Mother." The recordings played on repeat, mixing the death cries of their fallen comrades with static and distortion. Some of the younger soldiers started shaking. Others began to cry. The psychological impact was devastating. "How did they get those recordings?" Lieutenant Voss asked, his voice cracking with emotion. Krell realized the horrible truth. "They must have recovered our battle logs from damaged ships. They're using our own dead against us. That's forbidden. No civilized species would desecrate the memory of fallen warriors. Humans aren't civilized," Krell said quietly. "Not the way we understand it." The audio assault continued as human forces pressed their attack. Now Krell could see their tactics more clearly. The humans weren't trying to win a decisive battle. They were wearing down Draconian morale, using fear and confusion as weapons just as much as their rifles. One of Krell's soldiers broke under the pressure. Private Nash threw down his weapon and started running toward the human lines, screaming for the voices to stop. He made it 20 meters before a sniper round dropped him. But when Krell's medic team approached to recover the body, Nash suddenly sat up and smiled. His chest plate exploded in a ball of fire, killing 2 medics and wounding 3 more soldiers. Nash had been dead. Krell was certain of it. The sniper shot had been fatal. But somehow the humans had rigged his body with explosives, turning even their mercy into a trap. "Fall back to the secondary position," Krell ordered. His remaining forces retreated in disorder, leaving behind their dead and most of their equipment. As they reached the extraction point, Krell's communication officer received a message from human forces. It was short and transmitted in perfect Draconian military code. "Thank you for the training exercise. Your tactical data has been most educational. We look forward to our next engagement." The message was signed with the Iron Claw Battalion's own unit designation and Krell's personal command codes. Somehow, during the battle, the humans had broken their military encryption and were now using it to mock them. Krell stared at the message display, feeling something cold settle in his stomach. This hadn't been a battle. It had been a lesson. The humans had used his battalion as a learning tool, studying Draconian tactics and psychology, while systematically destroying their capability to fight. As the transport ships lifted off from Pharaoh Prime, leaving the planet in human hands, Krell realized that everything he thought he knew about warfare was wrong. The humans hadn't just defeated his forces. They had studied them, learned from them, and used that knowledge to break them. The worst part was knowing that somewhere on Pharaoh Prime, human commanders were already analyzing the battle data, preparing new tactics for their next encounter with Draconian forces. They would be ready for every strategy Krell might try, but he had no idea what they would do next. For the first time in his military career, Krell felt afraid. 6 months after Pharaoh Prime, the war had spread across 17 star systems. Krell stood in the command center of Battle Station Omega, watching tactical displays that showed nothing but bad news. Red markers indicated human victories. Blue markers showed hegemony defeats. The map was mostly red. "Sir, we're receiving reports from the Mantis front," Communications Officer Teal announced. Her voice carried a tremor that hadn't been there before the war started. "The 7th Mantis Hive Fleet has been eliminated." Krell felt his blood run cold. The Mantis were the finest space fighters in the galaxy. Their hive mind coordination made them nearly impossible to outmaneuver. A full hive fleet contained over 10,000 warriors. "What's the casualty report?" "Total losses, sir. All ships destroyed, no survivors recovered, and human casualties." Teal hesitated. "Initial reports suggest minimal losses, sir." Admiral Stone, the crystalline commander of the Joint Forces, turned from his console. His transparent body pulsed with frustrated orange light. "This is impossible. Humans cannot defeat Mantis hive tactics. Our allies have perfect coordination." Krell pulled up the battle recordings on his personal display. What he saw made no sense. The human ships moved in perfect formation, responding to Mantis maneuvers with flawless precision. But humans didn't have hive minds. They were individuals who communicated through primitive radio signals. "Computer, analyze human formation patterns," he commanded. The tactical AI processed the data for several minutes before responding. "Analysis complete. Human ships are using modified Mantis coordination algorithms. Pattern recognition suggests humans have successfully reverse-engineered Mantis hive mind communication protocols." The command center fell silent. Every officer stared at the display in shock. "That's impossible," Admiral Stone repeated. "Mantis hive mind communication is based on quantum entanglement between genetically identical organisms. Humans don't have the biological capability to interface with those systems. Computer, provide detailed analysis of human communication methods during the battle." Human forces employed artificial quantum entanglement devices connected to individual neural interfaces. Each human pilot maintained constant real-time communication with all other units in their formation. Effective result: artificial hive mind coordination with human tactical flexibility. Krell sank into his chair. The humans had done something that every military strategist considered impossible. They had taken the Mantis's greatest strength and made it their own, while keeping their ability to think independently. Before he could process this information fully, another report came in. "Sir, urgent communication from the Ethereal Defense Line. The 3rd Ethereal Mind Corps has encountered human forces using ethereal mental projection techniques. The Ethereals were energy beings who fought by projecting their consciousness directly into enemy minds, causing confusion and panic. Their mental attacks were completely invisible and could drive organic beings insane within minutes." "What do you mean humans are using ethereal techniques?" "The human soldiers appear to be wearing some kind of mechanical device that generates artificial psychic fields. They're projecting false thoughts and emotions into ethereal consciousness streams. The 3rd Mind Corps reports that human mental attacks are more effective than natural ethereal abilities." Krell stood up and walked to the main tactical display. The scope of what he was seeing finally became clear. On 17 different fronts, human forces were using modified versions of their enemy's own tactics. But these weren't crude copies. The humans had improved upon each technique, making them more effective than the originals. "Communications. Get me field reports from all active combat zones." Over the next hour, the reports painted a terrifying picture. On the Razor front, humans were using improved versions of laser-cutting beam technology. On the Crystal Worlds, human forces employed modified crystal sonic weapons that could shatter Crystal Warriors' natural armor. Against the Swarm, humans had developed better coordination than the Swarm's natural collective intelligence. "How are they doing this?" Admiral Stone asked. "Each of these technologies took our species thousands of years to develop. Humans have been in space for less than a century." Krell realized the horrible truth. "They're not developing new technology. They're stealing ours. Every time we engage them, they capture samples of our weapons, our communications, our tactical data. Then they reverse engineer everything and make it better. But reverse engineering takes years of research and development, not for humans." Krell pulled up intelligence reports on human military structure. "Look at this." Humans don't have separate research and combat divisions. Every human soldier is also an engineer, a scientist, and a tactician. They learn while they fight. The implications hit everyone in the command center at the same time. Every battle against humans wasn't just a military engagement. It was a technology transfer session. The longer the war continued, the more advanced human forces became. Sir, Officer Teal's voice was barely a whisper. We're receiving a priority communication from the 10th Draconian Fleet. Put it through. The holographic display activated, showing the bridge of a Draconian battleship. But something was wrong. The crew members moved with perfect coordination, responding to orders without hesitation or discussion. Their movements were too precise, too synchronized. This is Commander Brass of the 10th Fleet, the figure on screen announced. We have successfully captured Human Outpost 77 and are proceeding to our next objective. Krell frowned. Commander Brass had been killed 3 weeks earlier during the Battle of Morgan's Ridge, and the crew's behavior was all wrong. Draconians were proud individualists who argued constantly and questioned orders. These soldiers acted like machines. Commander Brass, please confirm your current position and verify your identity codes. Current position is grid reference 77 Alpha. Identity confirmed as Brass Commander 10th Fleet. The voice was perfect Draconian. The accent was correct. Even the military terminology was exactly right. But Krell noticed that the commander never moved his head to look at different speakers. His eyes stayed focused directly on the camera. Computer analyzed this transmission for authenticity. After a moment, the AI responded. Biological scans indicate non-draconian life forms. Voice analysis suggests artificial generation. Recommendation: treat this communication as enemy deception. Krell's blood turned to ice. The figures on screen weren't Draconians at all. They were humans wearing Draconian armor and using artificial voice generators. They had studied Draconian appearance and behavior so carefully that they could impersonate his people almost perfectly. How long have you been monitoring our communications? Krell asked directly. The fake Commander Brass smiled, and suddenly his accent shifted to perfect human standard. Long enough to learn everything we need to know about Draconian tactical doctrine. Commander Krell, thank you for being such excellent teachers. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Admiral Stone's crystalline body flickered between colors as he processed the implications. They've been infiltrating our communications networks. Everything we've discussed, every plan we've made, every tactical decision. They've been listening, Krell nodded grimly. Not just listening, learning. They've been studying how we think, how we plan, how we react under pressure. They know us better than we know ourselves. What do we do? Krell looked at the tactical display, watching red markers continue to spread across the galaxy. Human forces were advancing on all fronts, using the combined tactics of every species they had encountered. They had become the ultimate military force by stealing the best elements from every opponent. We do the only thing we can do, Krell said quietly. We prepare to lose. Bastion 4 had never fallen. The fortress world sat at the heart of hegemony space, protected by the most advanced defensive systems in the galaxy. Energy shields that could stop planet-killing weapons surrounded the entire planet. Automated defense platforms filled the space around it like a metal constellation. For 3,000 years, Bastion 4 had been considered the safest place in known space. Krell walked through the underground command bunkers, past rows of technicians monitoring defensive systems that had cost entire civilizations their yearly budgets to construct. The shield generators alone required the power output of 6 stars to maintain. Nothing could penetrate Bastion 4's defenses. That's what everyone believed until the humans arrived. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting human ships at the edge of the system, reported Technician Webb, a young Aquan whose blue skin had turned pale with stress. Fleet composition appears to be unusual. Define unusual. They're not using standard warship configurations. Sensors detect cargo vessels, mining ships, construction platforms. It looks like a civilian convoy, not a military fleet. Defense Coordinator Quinn, a massive Ursid warrior, growled from his station. Humans are trying to trick us into lowering our guard. Maintain full defensive posture. Krell studied the sensor readings carefully. Something felt wrong about the human approach. In every previous engagement, human forces had demonstrated superior tactical planning. This looked like a suicide mission. Computer, analyze human fleet capabilities and probable attack vectors. Analysis complete. Human fleet lacks sufficient firepower to penetrate planetary defenses. Recommend maintaining current defensive configuration and allowing approach to maximum weapons range. For 2 days, the human fleet advanced slowly toward Bastion 4. They made no aggressive moves, sent no demands for surrender, and ignored all communication attempts. They simply moved forward at a steady pace like a river flowing toward the sea. Sir, human forces have reached optimal weapons range, Webb announced. Defensive platforms are locked and ready to fire. Open fire. Destroy the human fleet. Bastion 4's defenses unleashed their full power. Energy beams that could cut through battleship armor lanced out toward the human ships. Missile swarms capable of destroying entire fleets streaked across space. The firepower was enough to sterilize a dozen worlds. Every shot hit empty space. What happened? Quinn demanded. How did we miss? Our targeting systems are perfect. Krell watched the sensor displays in confusion. The human ships were exactly where they had been moments before. The weapons had fired at the correct coordinates, but somehow every blast had passed through the human vessels without making contact. Computer, explain weapon system failure. No failure detected. All weapons fired correctly at designated targets. Then why didn't we hit anything? Unknown. Recommend continued analysis. The human fleet continued its approach, apparently undamaged by the massive weapons barrage. When they reached close range, something extraordinary happened. The civilian ships began to change. Construction platforms unfolded like metal flowers, revealing hidden weapon systems. Mining vessels transformed into assault ships. Cargo holds opened to release swarms of fighter craft. Within minutes, the peaceful convoy had become a full military fleet. But the ships weren't firing energy weapons. They were using projectile systems. Primitive chemical rockets and magnetic railguns launched simple metal objects toward Bastion 4's defenses. Sir, human forces are firing metal slugs at our shield generators, Webb reported, his voice confused. The projectiles are moving at high velocity, but they're just metal. Quinn laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. Stupid humans. Our energy shields can stop plasma bolts that burn hotter than stars. Simple metal projectiles can't possibly. His words died as the first projectile struck the shield generator. The metal slug passed right through the energy barrier as if it didn't exist. It struck the generator housing with devastating impact, sending chunks of debris spinning into space. How is that possible? Quinn roared. Krell understood immediately. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons. They deflect plasma, lasers, particle beams, and fusion warheads. But they don't stop solid matter moving at sublight speeds. That's impossible. No military force uses primitive projectile weapons. Humans do. Krell watched as more metal slugs penetrated their defenses, each one striking with the force of a small nuclear weapon. They're using kinetic energy instead of exotic energy. Our shields were never designed to stop simple physics. The bombardment continued for hours. Human ships fired thousands of metal projectiles, each one shaped for maximum penetration and impact. The sophisticated energy shields that had protected Bastion 4 for millennia were useless against chunks of metal, moving at incredible speeds. Sir, shield generators 7 through 12 are offline, Webb reported. Generators 1 through 6 are operating at reduced capacity. How can humans accelerate metal to such velocities without massive energy requirements? Krell pulled up technical analysis of the human weapons. What he saw defied conventional understanding of military technology. They're not using energy acceleration. They're using gravitational assist. What does that mean? Look at their approach vector. The human fleet swung around 3 different stars before arriving here. Each gravitational field accelerated their projectiles. By the time those metal slugs reach us, they're moving at significant fractions of light speed. The implications hit everyone in the command center simultaneously. Humans had used the galaxy's own stars as weapons accelerators. They had turned basic physics into a strategic advantage. But that requires incredible precision, Quinn protested. The calculations needed to plot gravitational assist trajectories across multiple star systems would take our best computers years to process. Computer, how long would it take to calculate similar trajectories? Estimated processing time: 4 years, 7 months, assuming optimal computational resources. Krell felt a chill run down his spine. How long has the human fleet been in this sector? Webb checked his records. Initial detection was 4 years, 8 months ago, but they weren't attacking. They were conducting what appeared to be scientific surveys. They weren't conducting surveys, Krell said quietly. They were calculating trajectories. They've been planning this attack for nearly 5 years. As if to confirm his fears, new contacts appeared on the sensors. More human fleets were approaching from different directions, each one following carefully plotted courses that would bring them to Bastion 4 with maximum kinetic energy. Sir, we're detecting human forces approaching from 7 different vectors. All ships appear to be carrying kinetic weapons. Estimated time to impact, 6 hours. The defense coordinator tried to rally his forces. We still have the defense platforms. Surely our point defense systems can stop metal projectiles. Computer, analyze effectiveness of point defense against incoming kinetic weapons. Point defense systems are optimized for energy-based threats. Probability of successfully intercepting high-velocity solid projectiles, 12%. The battle for Bastion 4 lasted 18 hours. Human forces bombarded the fortress world with weapons that hadn't been used by civilized species for thousands of years. Simple metal projectiles, fired with perfect precision, destroyed defense systems that had cost entire civilizations their treasuries. But the most terrifying part wasn't the weapons themselves. It was what happened after the defenses fell. As human troops landed on Bastion 4's surface, Krell noticed something strange about their equipment. The humans weren't using standard human technology. They were carrying a bizarre mixture of weapons and devices from dozens of different species. A human soldier walked past, carrying a mantis hive communicator, connected to a crystal sonic amplifier powered by an ethereal energy core. Another human used draconian armor fitted with Ursid strength enhancers and Aquan environmental systems. Computer, analyze human equipment configurations. Human forces are employing hybrid technology systems combining components from multiple alien civilizations. Effectiveness ratings exceed original design specifications in all categories. The humans had done more than just steal alien technology. They had figured out how to combine different systems in ways their creators had never imagined. A mantis communication device worked better when connected to crystal computing systems. Draconian armor became nearly indestructible when enhanced with Ursid material science. They're not just copying our technology, Krell realized. They're improving it by mixing different approaches together. As Bastion 4 fell to human forces, Krell understood that the war was already over. Humans didn't just adapt to alien technology. They made it better. They took the best elements from every species and combined them into systems that surpassed anything their creators had achieved. The hegemony had spent thousands of years developing their individual technologies in isolation. Humans had spent 5 years learning how to make everything work together. Standing in the ruins of the galaxy's greatest fortress, Krell realized that humans weren't just winning the war. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of how technology worked. The final battle began at the core worlds, where 7 different species had built their homeworld defenses together. 20 billion souls lived across the 3 planets that formed the heart of hegemony civilization. If the core worlds fell, the war would be over. Krell stood in the emergency command center on Harmony Prime, watching displays that showed the approaching human fleet. The numbers made his heart skip beats. 2,000 human ships moved toward them in perfect formation. Against them, the hegemony had assembled its final defense. 15,000 vessels from every remaining allied species. Sir, final casualty reports from the outer systems, Communications Officer Vale announced. Her voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had been delivering bad news for months. The Razor Confederation has officially surrendered. The Crystal Empire has withdrawn from the Alliance. The Swarm Collective has gone silent. Admiral North, a towering insectoid commander whose species had joined the Alliance just months earlier, clicked his mandibles nervously. That leaves us with 7 species, against humans who have absorbed the technology and tactics of 40 others. Krell nodded grimly. The mathematics were simple. Each time humans defeated another species, they became stronger. Each time the hegemony lost an ally, they became weaker. The war had turned into a spiral that only moved in one direction. Fleet composition report, Krell ordered. 15,000 vessels total. Draconian 3rd through 8th fleets. Ursid heavy battle groups, Aquan fast attack squadrons, Mantis hive remnants, ethereal mine ships, crystalline defense formations, and insectoid scout wings. It was an impressive force on paper. Under normal circumstances, 15,000 warships could conquer half the galaxy. But these weren't normal circumstances. Sir, human fleet has stopped at maximum sensor range, Vale reported. They're broadcasting something. Put it through. The main display activated, showing a human woman in simple military uniform. She looked young and unremarkable, nothing like the monster commanders that populated Krell's nightmares. When she spoke, her voice was calm and professional. Greetings to the defenders of the core worlds. My name is General Rivers, commander of the Terran Expeditionary Force. Before we begin this engagement, I want you to understand something important. Krell felt his scales prickle with unease. Humans never gave speeches before battles. Over the past 3 years, we have studied each of your species extensively. We know your tactical preferences, your technological capabilities, your cultural weaknesses, and your individual psychology. We have learned from every engagement. The general paused, looking directly into the camera as if she could see through the display into Krell's eyes. We don't want to destroy you. We want you to surrender. Not because we're merciful, but because killing you would be wasteful. You have knowledge we can use, technology we can improve, and perspectives we can learn from. Admiral North's mandibles chattered with rage. Arrogant humans. They speak as if our defeat is certain. We're offering you one opportunity to end this war without further bloodshed, General Rivers continued. Surrender now and your species will be incorporated into human space as autonomous regions. You'll keep your governments, your cultures, and your freedoms. You'll just be part of a larger civilization. And if we refuse? Krell found himself asking aloud. As if she had heard him, the general smiled. If you refuse, we'll demonstrate why resistance is pointless. You have 15,000 ships. We have 2,000. You outnumber us 7-1. Those should be excellent odds for you. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in uncomfortable silence. Sir, human fleet is advancing, Vale announced. All vessels moving at standard approach speed. No unusual formations or tactics detected. This feels like a trap, Admiral North muttered. Humans always have a plan. Set all fleets to maximum alert, Krell commanded. Prepare for engagement at optimal range. For the next 6 hours, the human fleet advanced steadily toward the core worlds. They made no attempt to hide their approach, used no deceptive tactics, and deployed no special weapons. They simply moved forward like a conventional military force. When the fleets engaged, the battle unfolded exactly as every tactical computer had predicted. The hegemony forces had numerical superiority, better defensive positions, and the advantage of fighting near their supply bases. For the first time in the war, everything seemed to be going according to plan. First contact with human advance forces, the tactical officer announced. Enemy vessels engaging our outer picket line. Damage reports? Minimal casualties. Human forces are retreating as expected. Our numerical advantage is proving decisive. For 12 hours, the battle continued in the hegemony's favor. Human ships fell back repeatedly, taking heavy losses while inflicting minimal damage in return. The Allied fleets pressed their advantage, driving toward the human command ships with growing confidence. Sir, we've destroyed over 800 human vessels, Vale reported excitedly. They're down to less than 1,200 ships remaining. At this rate, we'll have complete victory within 6 hours. Krell should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt increasingly worried. The battle was going too well. Humans didn't make tactical mistakes. They certainly didn't engage in battles they couldn't win. Computer, analyze human tactical behavior during this engagement. Analysis complete. Human forces are fighting defensively while maintaining fleet cohesion. Withdrawal patterns suggest strategic retreat rather than tactical defeat. What's the strategic purpose of their retreat? Unknown. Recommend continued analysis. The answer came 4 hours later, when the surviving human fleet suddenly stopped retreating and began broadcasting on all frequencies. But they weren't using human voices. They were using the voices of fallen hegemony soldiers. Please, someone help me, sobbed a draconian voice that Krell recognized as Commander Steele from the 4th Fleet. Steele had died 3 hours earlier when his ship was destroyed. I don't want to die alone out here. I miss my clutch brothers, whispered a mantis voice. I want to go home to the hive. The pain is so terrible, groaned an Urseed voice. Why did we have to fight? Why couldn't we just live in peace? The broadcast continued for hours, playing the final communications from thousands of hegemony soldiers who had died during the battle. The psychological impact was devastating. Crews began breaking down as they heard the voices of friends and comrades who had died just hours earlier. How do they have those recordings? Admiral North demanded. Those were private communications on secured channels. Krell realized the terrible truth. They've been monitoring all our communications throughout the entire battle. They know everything we've said, every order we've given, every tactical plan we've discussed. That's impossible. Our communication systems are quantum encrypted. Computer, analyze security status of all communication networks. Warning. Unauthorized access detected on all communication channels. Estimated compromise time, approximately 14 months. The command center fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. For over a year, humans had been listening to every military communication in hegemony space, every tactical discussion, every strategic plan, every private conversation between commanders had been monitored and recorded. Sir, Vale's voice was barely a whisper. We're receiving individual communications addressed to specific crew members throughout the fleet. What do you mean? The humans are sending personal messages to individual soldiers. They're using the names of family members, discussing private conversations, referencing personal fears and hopes. They know everything about our people. The psychological warfare reached a crescendo when human forces began broadcasting messages in perfect draconian, speaking about home and family with intimate knowledge of each listener's personal life. Krell of the Iron Claw, said a voice that sounded exactly like his deceased brother. Remember when we were younglings playing warrior games in the Crystal Caves? You always said you'd protect everyone you cared about, but you can't protect them from this war. The humans know where everyone lives. They know about your sister's children on New Draconia. They know about your father's farm on the Outer Rim. Surrender now and keep your family safe. Krell's claws dug into his command chair. The voice was perfect, down to his brother's unique accent and speech patterns. But his brother had died 15 years ago in an industrial accident. Across the fleet, similar messages played for every crew member. Humans spoke in the voices of dead relatives, childhood friends, and lost loves. They demonstrated intimate knowledge of personal histories, family connections, and individual psychological weaknesses. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Soldiers began abandoning their posts. Ship after ship reported crew mutinies as personnel demanded immediate surrender. Within hours, the massive hegemony fleet was falling apart from within. Sir, the Aquan Fast Attack Squadron has broken formation and is retreating toward their home system, Vale reported. The Mantis Hive remnants are requesting permission to surrender. 3 Ursid battle groups have gone silent. Order all vessels to maintain position. Sir, I don't think they're listening anymore. Krell watched his fleet disintegrate on the tactical display. The humans hadn't won through superior firepower or brilliant tactics. They had won by demonstrating that resistance was psychologically impossible. They knew everything about their enemies, including things that should have been unknowable. As the last hegemony ships either fled or surrendered, General Rivers appeared on the main display again. Commander Krell, she said, addressing him directly. We've studied your psychological profile extensively. We know you're a soldier who values honor above personal safety. We also know you care deeply about protecting innocent lives. She was right, and knowing that she was right made everything worse. The war is over, Rivers continued. Your fleets are defeated, your allies have abandoned you, and your people are ready to surrender. You can end this now and save lives, or you can continue fighting and watch your entire civilization destroy itself from within. Krell looked around the command center at his remaining officers. They were all staring at him with exhausted, desperate eyes. They wanted permission to stop fighting a war they couldn't win. What are your terms? He asked quietly. Unconditional surrender. Your species will be integrated into human space as autonomous regions. You'll keep your cultural identity and local government, but ultimate authority rests with human administration. And if we refuse, General Rivers' expression didn't change. Then we'll demonstrate what happens to species that resist integration. And trust me, Commander, you don't want to see that demonstration. Krell closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his entire civilization's future on his shoulders. When he opened them again, he knew what he had to do. I hereby surrender all hegemony forces to human authority, he said formally. The war is over. 15 years had passed since the surrender at the core worlds. Krell sat in the witness chair of the Galactic Council chambers, his testimony almost complete. The faces looking down at him had changed throughout his story, shifting from curiosity to concern to outright fear. And that's how the war ended. Krell concluded. Not with a great battle or heroic last stand. With a whimper. 47 species surrendered to humans because we realized that continued resistance would only make things worse. The council speaker, the tall blue creature with 6 arms, leaned forward. What happened after the surrender? Were the human terms honored? Krell nodded slowly. Humans kept their word, mostly. Our species were allowed to maintain local governments and cultural traditions. No mass killings, no forced relocations, no slavery. From the outside, it looked like a generous peace treaty. But, prompted the speaker, but humans didn't need to use force to control us. They had already broken us psychologically. We policed ourselves. He gestured to the representatives sitting around the chamber. Look at us, 15 years later, and we still jump when humans clear their throats. We still check our communications for human monitoring. We still modify our behavior based on what we think humans want to hear. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Krell's words hit closer to home than they wanted to admit. The worst part is the knowledge that humans are still studying us. Every interaction, every conversation, every decision we make gets analyzed and filed away for future reference. They know how we think better than we know ourselves. The mantis representative clicked its mandibles nervously. Surely you exaggerate. The war has been over for 15 years. Humans have shown no aggressive intentions toward council species. Krell laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. Humans don't need to show aggressive intentions. They've already won. Every species in this chamber has modified their military doctrine based on lessons learned from the human hegemony war. We've all adopted human-inspired tactics and technologies. We're becoming more like them every day. Is that necessarily bad? Asked the crystal representative, her transparent form shimmering with uncertain colors. Human technology and tactics proved superior. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Krell said, pointing at her with one clawed finger. You're already thinking like humans. Efficiency over honor, results over principles, adaptation over tradition. He stood up from his chair and walked to the center of the chamber. 15 years ago, your species would have considered it dishonorable to adopt enemy tactics. Now you call it practical. Humans didn't just defeat us militarily. They changed how we think about everything. The human ambassador in the back corner continued taking notes in her small notebook. She had been writing steadily throughout Krell's entire testimony, recording every word, every gesture, every emotional response from the council members. What evidence do you have that humans are still monitoring other species? The speaker asked. Krell smiled grimly. Watch her. He pointed at the human ambassador. She's been documenting this entire session. Not just my words, but your reactions. She's studying how each species responds to information about human capabilities. Even now she's gathering intelligence. All eyes turned to the human woman. She looked up from her notebook and smiled pleasantly. I'm simply keeping records for historical purposes. This testimony will be valuable for future scholars studying interspecies relations. What scholars? Krell challenged. What research? Who's going to read those notes? The ambassador's smile never wavered. Oh, you'd be surprised how many people are interested in understanding how different species process traumatic information. It's fascinating research. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Every council member realized they were being studied in real time, their psychological responses analyzed and cataloged for unknown purposes. You see? Krell said to the council. This is what humans do. They study everything, learn from everything, prepare for everything. Prepare for what? The speaker asked. The next war. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Several council members began talking at once, their voices rising in alarm and confusion. There is no next war, protested the ethereal representative, his energy form flickering with agitation. Humans are peaceful members of the galactic community. Humans are never peaceful, Krell replied. They're just patient. They're still learning, still adapting, still preparing. The human hegemony war taught them how 47 species fight and think. Now they're learning about the rest of you. He walked slowly around the chamber, making eye contact with each representative. How many of your species have participated in joint training exercises with human forces? How many have shared technological data in the name of interspecies cooperation? How many have allowed human observers to study your military academies and strategic doctrines? The silence that followed was answer enough. Every cultural exchange, every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation has been a learning opportunity for humans. They've been studying galactic civilization for 15 years, understanding every strength and weakness of every member species. The Ursid representative, a massive bear-like creature, growled deep in his throat. What are you suggesting? That we should exclude humans from galactic society? I'm suggesting that you understand what you're dealing with, Krell replied. Humans aren't evil. They're not malicious. They're just the most effective learning machines the galaxy has ever produced. They turn every interaction into an educational experience. He stopped in front of the human ambassador, who continued smiling pleasantly while taking notes. Tell them, Krell said to her directly. Tell them how many human research facilities are studying alien psychology. Tell them about the databases of cultural information your government maintains. Tell them about the contingency plans. The ambassador looked up from her notebook. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Commander Krell, humans are committed to peaceful coexistence with all galactic species. But you're prepared for the alternative. Humans are always prepared for alternatives. That's what makes us effective. The simple honesty of her statement was more terrifying than any threat would have been. Krell turned back to the council. That's my warning. Humans don't start wars. They finish them. They spend decades preparing for conflicts that may never happen. And if those conflicts do occur, their enemies discover that humans have already planned for every possible scenario. What do you recommend? The speaker asked quietly. I recommend you remember what happened to the hegemony. 47 species with superior technology and numerical advantage, defeated by creatures who had barely learned to fly between stars. We lost because we underestimated human adaptability. And if we don't underestimate them, Krell was quiet for a long moment. Then maybe you'll survive what's coming. What's coming? I don't know. But humans are preparing for something. They've been studying galactic civilization for 15 years. They understand our weaknesses, our fears, our methods of making decisions. When they're ready to act, they'll know exactly how to achieve whatever goals they've set. The chamber fell silent as council members contemplated the implications of his words. Finally, the speaker addressed the human ambassador directly. Do you have any response to Commander Krell's testimony? The woman closed her notebook and stood up gracefully. Commander Krell has provided fascinating insights into the psychological aftermath of military defeat. His testimony will be invaluable for our ongoing research into post-conflict trauma and species adaptation patterns. She paused, looking around the chamber with that same pleasant smile. I want to thank the Council for allowing me to observe these proceedings. The data we've collected today will help us better understand how different species process fear, authority, and social dynamics under stress. She gathered her materials and walked toward the exit. At the door, she turned back to address the chamber one final time. Commander Krell is right about one thing. Humans are always learning. We study everything, everyone, every situation we encounter. Knowledge is power, and power is security. Security against what? The speaker called out. The ambassador's smile widened slightly. Against the unknown. You never know what challenges the future might bring. She left the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Krell looked up at the council members, their faces pale with dawning understanding. Now you know, he said quietly. Now you understand what it means to be studied by humans. What do we do? Someone asked. Krell shrugged, a gesture that carried the weight of 15 years of defeat. What can you do? Humans have already learned everything they need to know about you. They've been learning for 15 years. The question isn't what you can do to them. He walked toward the exit, his claws clicking against the metal floor. The question is what they're planning to do with everything they've learned.